Hello, everybody. It is great to be here one more time today. And my name is Gary Fowler, and I'm the CEO, president, and co founder of GSD Get Shit Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart, yes, the heart of Silicon Valley, Palo Alto. I'm a serial entrepreneur with 17 startups under my belt. I was on the original management team of Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Yva.ai. Love artificial intelligence and quantum computing. Love making an impact on the world. I love making the world a better place. So with that, I'd like to introduce Albena Todorova. Albena is an entrepreneur. She's an investor. She's from Sofia, Bulgaria. We're going to be talking about genomes, gene tech, agribusiness, etc. And with that, I'd like to bring Albena. Hi, Albena. How are you doing today?
Hello, good morning, Gary and everyone. Really nice to see you. How are you doing?
Good. So you're right in Sofia today.
That's right, I'm based in Sofia, Bulgaria.
How is everything in Sofia these days?
Well, we are welcoming a very cool and crisp spring, and we're not too far from the events in Ukraine. I'm not sure how relevant is to bring that on a tech show. But if we're talking about agribusiness and food and agriculture, I think the events in the war in Ukraine and what's going on in that part of the world cannot go unnoticed. But other than that, things are calm.
Yeah, so you're not too. How far is the Ukraine from Sofia?
Actually, it's 500 kilometers to the seaside, more or less, and then just across the Black Sea. So by land, it's around 1,500 kilometers, which is what a little bit more than a little bit more than 1,000 miles from here.
Got it. So I got a question for you. You studied Japanese, right? So
That's right.
how in the world did you get into, did you get into agri-food by studying, because your undergraduate degree was in Japanese studies, and then you got your first master's in East Asian studies. What made you decide to flip? When did you say, I'm not going to do this anymore? And you were also a translator, correct?
That's right, Gary. No, but that's what I call a curveball because I've been preparing today the whole day to speak about genome editing. I'm not a scientist by training, so I was wanted to make sure that all my data points are right and all of that. But that's a curveball with that question. So basically, yes, I studied Japanese in undergrad here in Sofia. I went to Japan as an exchange student. I wanted to become a teacher of Japanese literature originally, but because that vocation, like teaching Japanese and so on, does not make you a living here, or at least was not making in my days, I started working as a translator and project coordinator for Japanese companies coming to do business in Bulgaria. And that's how I met my employer, Sumitomo Corporation. I worked on an M&A project with them here in Bulgaria in 2013. And then they offered me a full-time job in Germany. So I decided that I was just about to turn 30 and I was thinking, okay, this is once in a lifetime chance. So I just decided to hop, and I hopped on the corporate finance train, and here I am.
Wow, that's amazing. So you went down through. So what was it like when you were in Japan? How did it feel? Did you like being in Japan?
So I spent all in all a little bit more than 2 years and a half in Japan on different training exchange programs and working and so on. I
Mhm.
think that it depends very much on your background. Like myself being a Caucasian woman in a government-funded program, it was it was a nice place to be. But I think that if you are Korean or Chinese or from that background, and you go to Japan for, to work, that's a completely different setup. For me,
Oh,
switching from
really? Why
academic
is that?
background, yeah.
Why
Well,
is that,
because
Albina?
my observations, especially like speaking with colleagues and so on, my observations are that some Japanese, especially from the previous generations, sometimes might have a little bit of you do know that they have an upsetting history during the Second World War with Korea, with China, and that history hasn't been completely solved. So it's not my story to tell because I'm neither Korean nor Chinese nor Japanese. But I just do think that there is a big difference in going to Japan in the role of a guest, so to say, and going there to work. So for me, when I switched to so-called salaryman, like, business person life, the expectations changed. The way I, had to speak and walk and
Really?
behave myself also did.
How
Yeah,
did it change?
it's much more rigid. If you're part of because in most of the Japanese companies, you have two types of employment. You have the so-called general employment, where you have like the normal type of career path, as in most of the companies that we know in the Western world. And then you have the so-called assistant track, where you basically have no, like, those are the people who spend their whole careers churning the wheels without being able to get promoted or become managers and so on. So I was in
Really?
the former one. Yes, it's a very, I mean,
And how do you, what's the difference? How do you get in one track or another one in Japan?
if you're Japanese, like which one you're applying for, or which one is, which one you want to go for and so on. If you're not Japanese, you learn it the hard way, I guess. But I was very very lucky to be part of the former one. Like the hurdle you need to jump is way higher, but also is the reward, and so is,
And
so
what's
is
the
the,
difference? So you have two people. What's the difference if you're in one or the other?
well, it's first of all the package that you get offered, but also can you get promoted to a manager or not. With the former, it's much easier. With the former, it's much more plausible compared to the latter. People who are hired in the latter usually are women who stay like in an assistant position or like a support position for their whole careers, or most of the part of their careers. Very rarely it is that one changes tracks between the two.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, and so yeah, so you can't get promoted in the one track, but you can get promoted in the other track.
That's usually the case, yes.
And what's the salary difference? Is the salary a lot different from one to the other?
I cannot speak for Japanese people because it's slightly different, but I think that towards the, I don't know, middle or like second part of the career, it can get really significant.
Wow, that's amazing. And so what's the one thing that you thought was a lot different from Bulgaria? What was one thing coming in besides the career stuff? What was the part of the customs that you thought were a lot different
You
compared
know,
to
I'm
Bulgaria?
I'm I'm not a typical Bulgarian, Gary. I was born in the USSR to a half Tatar, half Ukrainian mother and a Bulgarian father. And then my parents decided to move to Bulgaria when I was little. So I've always been a little bit of an outsider in Bulgaria. Like I didn't have a Bulgarian passport. I think until I was 12 or so. So like, I had this kind of, not in a very pleasant way, stand out-ish thing. So I didn't really feel that awkward or foreign in Japan. Like it was just my my foreignness being transported to another, like being I don't know, being seen from another angle. But I think the way people behave with each other, the level of I don't know, the distance between people, also the language that you use. For instance, almost all of the Japanese language that is taught in institutions is a female Japanese, because there is such thing as gender-based language use in Japan. There is the field in linguistics called linguistic pragmatics, which deals with that. So very often non-Japanese men who study Japanese and then go to Japan are not exactly ridiculed, but like not being taken seriously because they speak a little bit of a feminine Japanese.
Oh,
Um,
really? And they don't
yes.
even know it, right?
No, they don't know it. So when I was working with Japanese people before I started at Sumitomo, I had very often, because I was working with the TV crews and diplomatic missions, like all sorts of people, and very often we would only exchange emails before they would come to Bulgaria for me to work with them. And they would say, "Oh, we were expecting you to be a man because your Japanese is like a manlish Japanese," and I would say, "No, it's gender neutral." So I trained myself, like with the help of people, of course, to speak a very like gender neutral Japanese language, because otherwise I think it's a disadvantage if you go too much either way when
Wow,
you're a foreigner.
that's amazing. And so do you write in kanji too?
I've thanks to these things that we're using these days, like phones and stuff, I've lost almost all my kanji like writing abilities, but I can read I can speak so quite a
How
few.
does it work though? How can you be interpreter and can you read? You can read kanji, yeah?
I can read, yes, of course. I can read kanji. I can read kanji. I used to be able to write kanji, but now even Japanese people can't write those anymore. But how come you know so much about Japan? Have you lived there or traveled there?
No, we've done a lot of business
Right.
in Japan and dealt with a lot of people there regularly. So a little bit familiar with it. So I'm just fascinated about the culture, and I didn't realize that there's such a difference in how people treat one another. And I know about the gender-based language piece, but I didn't know it was that profound. But it's interesting. Why do they go out? Why do they go out and party so much in Japan? Like, is it true they have karaoke bars and all that, and they really go out at nighttime? Is that true, or is that a misnomer?
I think it depends very much on who you're looking at. For
Mhm.
instance, for people who do work together, sometimes because the hierarchy in Japanese companies is still so strict and straightforward and, I don't know, unavoidable. Sometimes people need to go out to, have a couple drinks and go to karaoke in order to be able to really communicate with each other, not
Mhm.
just create rapport, but
But
also
they do
sometimes,
that in the organizations too. They like take it as part of the
yes.
bonding, right?
That's right. It's very important to be able to speak like what you really want, but sometimes it's just a way, to become closer with your manager or with your manager's manager. It's like, company
Do they do that
politics.
every night?
I would say that every night is an overstatement, especially with younger generations who tend to prefer to spend more time with their families. It's
Mhm.
not that often, but for people whom I worked with who were in their like mid 40s to mid 50s, for them it was not unusual to be out every other night. Let's put it that way.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh my god. How do they get to work in the morning? It must be really difficult because you gotta go all the way home on a train and then back again, right?
Have you seen in Japan, have you seen those like vending machines with like tons of different types of coffee, and
Yeah, yeah,
also the
yeah.
convenience stores that are usually also stocked on coffee and so on? That's the answer right to your question, I think.
Really? That's amazing. Wow. Now that's great. So let's talk about the agribusiness. Let's talk about some of the things you're working on. So talk about Rabo Food and Agri Innovation
Mhm.
Fund. Tell us a little bit about what that's about.
So I'm a venture partner with Rabobank's Food and Ag Innovation Fund.
Mhm.
I started with them last July. And Rabobank is one of the largest food and agriculture specialist banks in the world. We do stand on two, like the bank's business stands on two pillars. One is retail banking for farmers and the farming communities, and the other one is B2B business with large food and agriculture companies. The investment arm of Rabobank is called Rabo Investments, which
Mhm.
manages, I think, a little bit over 2 billion euro, which is what, 2.2 billion US dollars
Mhm.
in funds of funds, direct investments, and venture investments. So different activities in different teams. And our team has around 200 million allocation for direct venture investments into startups in the food and agtech space. So
Mhm.
we invest in North America, Europe, and Israel into Series A to Series B, I would say. So companies, I think when we spoke first, when I mentioned our ticket sizes, you were like, no, that's seed, because I think the valuations and ticket sizes in the valley are different compared to what we see in Europe these days, but this is more or less our sweet spot as investors.
How does it go though? I have a question for Albina. So their evaluations could be a third less, right? Or two-thirds less in Europe. But the situation is people want to compete globally. How do they justify, and I hear, from Swiss companies, from Austrian, from German, I mean, most of the all of the pan-European continent. I'm trying to think of one country that's got valuations higher. I think maybe Estonia or someplace has a bit,
Or the UK.
UK, a bit higher, but still not 100%, right? They're still off. But how does it work once you invest in those companies at a seed level and then they go global and all of a sudden their valuations go through the roof, right? How does it work? I mean, does it have any impact on those investments or not?
I can't speak for all companies because I think Food is slightly different. If you're looking at brand business, this is not something that we specialize in. But if you look at ag tech companies per se, or food companies that are specialists in technology or supply chain and so on, I think that it is a challenge, especially for agriculture companies, to go global per se, simply because unlike fintech companies, if you work with fintech, like people spend money and earn money every day, in each of the 200 something countries that are in this world. With agriculture, that's not the case. Even if there is agriculture in almost any single country in this world, maybe for the Vatican, which they do have gardens, but I'm not sure they have agriculture. But joke aside, there is such a high variability in climate, in types of crop, in types of soil, and so on, that it might take them years and years to go from, I don't know, from one continent to another, especially if we speak about companies with longer iteration cycles, with longer development cycles. So we look very carefully when we discuss with companies. We look very carefully at their growth strategy, because a company, for instance, I don't know, just as an example, a French company that says we'll go to the US next, opposed to we'll go to Italy or to the UK or to Germany, which are, just next door, and where culture is a little bit more similar, maybe costs are a little bit more manageable compared to the States and so on, then it is an important discussion point when we speak with startups.
Oh, and so where do you find your startups?
Well, we do find startups in very many different places. Some of them are introduced by our co-investment partners, because we do have a network of funds and organizations we've co-invested with. Events, there's a few agriculture events. We do look at different pitches and so on. Rabobank has we do have an accelerator type of thing called Food Bites, where startups in the food and agtech space can apply to and be part of the program. So we do have that also, as well as deal flow.
What does it work? Where does it work? What do you give them when they come in? How much do you invest in the company, or how does it work?
So our initial ticket size is somewhere between 2.5 million up to, I would say, 5.5 million euro, which is what.
That's for the accelerator?
No, that's not for the. So the accelerator, it's no, that's our investment out of the fund. Sorry, I thought you were speaking about the fund.
No,
so
I'm
in the
just curious about
accelerator,
the accelerator.
we're not taking equity to my knowledge. I'm not maybe the best person to talk about the accelerator, Gary. We have like a full team in the on the Food Bite side, but we give them exposure. We give them the Food Bites is a brand in itself in the food and agtech space. Like, it's been going on for quite a while. People know it, investors know it. So we give them exposure, access to investors, but we also give them access to research and knowledge and advice from the Rabo network. So that's this is what I think they benefit from the most. But I think almost all, I need to look at data a little bit better, but I think that almost all Food Bites companies, like the Food Bites alumni, go on to raise additional funds and move further.
Now, do you ever invest in those companies?
Out of the fund, we look at them seriously. I think maybe I'm not sure, but I don't think we have invested so far in a Food Bites company out of our
How many
fund.
companies do you have a year that you invest in? How many in general? How many companies?
We try to invest in 3 to 4 new companies, and we want to support our existing companies. So we do follow on investments as well for the companies that are already in our portfolio.
And what's the average ticket size again?
We invest in US dollars. It's between 3 and 6 million as an initial ticket size, and we have.
Oh, that's great. And where are the companies generally located, Albena? Where are they coming from geographic? Are they European companies, or where do they come from? Which country?
We have 2 companies out of Israel. We have 4, I think, in the States, and then the rest are the UK, Norway, the Netherlands, so the UK and continental Europe.
Oh, that's fantastic. And what's the process like? How long does it take to get the investment approved? Because I know sometimes funds take a long time. What's it take? How long does it
Funds,
take for due diligence and everything?
funds take a long time. Let's put it that way. I mean, it depends very much on the process. It depends whether we know the company from before or not. And my personal preferred approach is to get to know a company when they're a little bit too early for us, so I can follow up with them, get part of my intelligence done, follow their traction, follow their product development and growth and so on. So it makes a much easier investment case. I mean, with your acceleration program and with your investment activity, I guess that you're familiar with this approach. But in general, it could take, I don't know, up to a couple months from I don't know, from initial contact to investment, or yeah, I would say a couple months plus or
Now,
minus.
did you ever get into a deal that you really wanted and you missed out?
Because of timeline,
Yeah.
you like one misses out on for many different reasons. But usually the startups that want to work with us and when we want to work with them, because Rabo can offer a lot of support, we find a way to work together.
No, that's great. And do you like doing what you're doing, Albena?
I like a very big part of it, yes.
What about the other part?
Well, there is always the other part,
Mhm.
but no, I do like what I'm doing. I mean, I've done it. I mean, I come from before doing venture. When I switched my career paths, I was doing corporate finance and M&A portfolio management for like larger companies, like more mature companies. And I do like I do like venture more compared to that. I just have sometimes, the question whether venture investments are the best tool to, create innovation in agriculture, because venture and agriculture, I think, are on the two, like they're on the two poles of some sort of a, I don't know, scale in terms of speed and pace and expectations and all of that.
No, that's great. And so what's it look like? How's the size of the fund? How big is the fund right now? How many
It's 200 million euro, so 220 million US dollars or so.
and how much
That's
of it's
just our fund.
deployed right now?
We have deployed a little bit less than half, I think.
Wow. So you're looking for companies.
We are indeed looking for companies. Yes. If I mean, we are always looking for great companies. For us, what is really important now is sustainability and impact. So the ESGs/SDGs. That's something that we are really looking very carefully for at the moment.
So remember, audience out there, sustainability and impact. Looking, Albena's doesn't location doesn't matter. It matters about the impact. Love, you've got what kind of tell us about the technologies you're looking for in particular, Albena. What really excites you in terms of technologies?
I know that you yourself are an AI investor or like an AI specialist, so I'm sure that you want to hear AI. We are actually technology agnostic, to be honest. We look for all sorts of technologies. It could be machine vision, it could be artificial intelligence. We are not particularly hyped about blockchain at the moment because were a lot of discussions. It was quite of a, I don't know, hot topic a couple of years ago, but I think it's quite challenging to find applications for that are, immediately attractive from an economic perspective.
Mhm.
I think it's more about the business models than the technologies, because, for instance, when we look at the remote sensing and satellite imagery applied in agriculture, there's quite a few companies that are doing that, but what is the value for the farmer? So these are actually the questions that we're asking, like who is benefiting from this technology? What is the value for the farmer? How is this really helping the farmer to, to grow more, to grow better? Because one of the biggest problems in agriculture is that we have less and less farmers globally. And it's
Yeah,
not
well, we
just.
have less and less farmers, a lot more people that want to eat.
Yes, exactly. Because farming is it's dirty, risky, and all of these things. My grandparents on my paternal side here in Bulgaria, they were sheep farmers, and then on my maternal side, my granddad Sagid, he was an agronomist with fruit trees, planting fruit trees in the Caucasian region. So, I mean, this is not, I do understand the farmer's perspective.
Mhm.
I also do understand the investor's perspective. But I think that maybe one of the biggest risks that we are facing in agriculture is of course soil health as well, but the other one is labor,
Yeah, no,
lack of
I've heard
labor.
about that. I've heard about there's only so many cycles left of the soil, right? Like 5 cycles or something. Is it true?
I think that 5 cycles is a little bit of an overestimation. I
Mhm,
think that the whole no, I don't know how familiar you are with the no tillage movement. So
mhm,
it's a movement that tries to help farmers labor the land without without tillage, so without basically avoid soil compaction, which
mhm.
means no, like much less heavy machinery and so on going into the field. I don't know about 5 cycles. It depends maybe on the
Do you
region
know
and
how many
so on.
cycles are out there now? Because I remember reading some, how many cycles are out there?
I've read something like 20 cycles in the Midwest. I've
What
read
does it
something.
mean? Can you tell us what the 20 cycles means? What happens on the 21st cycle in the Midwest? And
Um,
so I'm just want to frame it for potential startups, right? What does it mean?
so putting aside the number, so is it 20 or 120 or however, or how, like regardless what the number, what it means is that after a certain point, the top, because the plants usually grow in the top, I don't know, 50 centimeter, like we speak now about row crops, so the crops that are harvested each year and then replanted, and not about the perennial crops like trees and vineyards and so on. So what it means usually for the row crops is that after a certain point, even if you plant your seeds, you would either not be able to get any harvest at all whatsoever,
Hmm.
or you would have to dramatically change something about your farming practices. For instance, let the land empty, or plant some sort of for a couple of cycles, plant some sort of recovering crop, or find a way to irrigate it, which in many parts of the world is impossible.
Yeah,
Or
and getting worse.
yes, exactly. Like the water pressure, like water pressure is really high, and the deeper you dig for water, the less it gets. So that's the vicious cycle of forced irrigation.
Are you looking for companies that deal with challenges like increased water supplies and desalination as it applies to farmers, right? To be able to get the water. Are you looking that far downstream in terms of the companies, or is it uh, particularly dealing with the farms, or you're looking for technologies to make for instance, solar power for a farm? Are you looking at those kind of technologies too, or not?
So solar power for a farm, not necessarily. It should be
Mhm.
connected directly with the farmer practices, so what's happening on the
Got it.
field, not necessarily the livelihood of the farmers or of the
Hmm.
farmer community. If the company somehow is able to connect the solar power with something that happens in the field, this is something that we welcome, of course.
Got it.
But we basically look for companies that are dealing with all sorts of stress. It could be plant stress, water stress, labor stress, soil stress, any of these.
Interesting. Well, listen, we're coming to the top of the show. I want to say thank you very much for taking time of your busy schedule. So, closing thoughts and how do people reach you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. There are not that many Albena Todorovas, so very happy to get connected on LinkedIn. And as a closing thought, if you are a startup or an investor interested in agtech and foodtech, feel free to reach out. And whoever you are, if you are eating today or smoking or drinking coffee or eating chocolate or whatever, or drinking water, please be mindful that these things come to your hands thanks to a very invisible and hardworking farming community.
Yeah, no, with that, thank you so much, Albina, for taking time. To my audience out there, thank you for joining one more time. GSD presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech, and I'm your host, Gary Fowler. Stay happy, stay safe, and most importantly, stay healthy. I'll be back again on Thursday with another exciting edition of GSD Presents. See you later, everybody. Thanks, Albina.
Thank you so much, Gary, for having me. Thank you.
Bye bye.